Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. So the weather is changing. We're heading into autumn, or as it's called in America, fall. I think because the leaves fall off the trees, and that means it's time to start thinking about wearing a more autumnal perfume to fit with the change in weather, the change in clothes, and just the change in mood and vibe. So this perfume is going to be my 10 autumn perfume recommendations, perfumes that just make me feel all cozy and autumnal and feel like they're appropriate to wear with a coat and just make you feel nice on those horrible autumn days. If you're new here, then welcome. My channel is all about perfume, and every week I have new perfume videos out, so do subscribe, get involved in the comments, any requests you have for perfume reviews, because I do read all your comments and try and do your requests. So the first on my list is Giorgio Armani's C. This has been out for a few years. There are a couple of different flankers, but I think this Eau de Parfum version and some of the other flankers that have come out, which are Eau de Parfum, are just perfect for the autumn. This fragrance I love, like spraying on a scarf and being able to smell it as I'm walking around town. I find it very comforting and cozy. It's got vanilla in, but not too much. It's not overly sweet. And then it has patchouli in, and I just find patchouli is so great for making perfumes last, as well as making them feel like that cozy and cuddly vibe. It's then got a really pretty rose and cassis notes in it, which make it nice and feminine. I'd say this is a classy smell. I get complimented whenever I wear it. People ask me what I'm wearing, so it definitely has good production, and it's appropriate for daytime, office work, as well as like going out at night time. So this is probably my top autumnal perfume recommendation. Next on my list is Good Girl from Carolina Herrera. This comes in the very cute and unusual shoe-shaped bottle, and this original Eau de Parfum is pretty good for lasting. It's a little bit on the sweeter side, but it's still a very warm fragrance. It's essentially like a tonka bean and an almost chocolatey vibe that you get from it, so very like warming. There's then tuberose and jasmine, which help keep it quite feminine, and then almond, which provides an element of sweetness, but it's still like a nutty sweetness rather than a, you know, a sugar sweetness. So that nuttiness, I think, is, you know, September, October, November, you get conkers on trees and, you know, squirrels eating nuts. That's what I think about when I think of autumn. So I think nutty fragrances work really well in the autumn. The body products that go with this as well are all really nice and help complement it. There's also an element of coffee in here, and I just imagine those sort of cold autumnal mornings with like a cup of coffee and having the Good Girl on would just fit really well. And Good Girl's also quite good for evenings because it is a little bit of a sexy type perfume, and I think it's one that men do like, and it does fit very well into a sort of bar type environment. Next, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you won't be surprised that I'm recommending the Elie Saab Le Parfum. This is the original from Elie Saab, but I'd also say the new Royale and an intense version of this would be just as good for the autumn. Essentially, I just find this fragrance, it just reminds me of like a hug. I always, when I put it on, it just lifts my spirits. It's really sparkling and it's so classy. It feels like it should be the type of fragrance that costs like £1,000, because it just smells like if you could put classiness in a bottle. To me, this is what it would smell like. It's got the patchouli and rose in again, like C, but then jasmine and the African orange flower and a bit of honey that works really well with the orange flower, but you can't really tell any individual notes. It all mixes together and creates this like champagne sparkling fragrance that's just really pleasant and like a hug, and definitely a good one for office wear and appropriate for evenings as well. I wouldn't say it was a particularly sexy perfume. I wouldn't say it was like a date night perfume, but I would say it was definitely like a womanly, female, comforting fragrance. Next, I'm recommending the new Lancome fragrance Idole that comes in this teeny thin little bottle. very unusual. I have been really impressed with this. It was only just released and released in time for autumn. I think it's a classy smell. It's basically like a musky rose with quite a bit of pear in, and I think pear is a really soft fruit in a perfume. You know, it's not zesty like or sharp like citrus that you'd want more spring summer. It's not fruity or tropical that you'd want in the summer. Pear is like fresh, but it's a, you know, it's an autumnal fruit pear. It's like, it's the kind of thing you'd have in like an autumn dessert in a restaurant or something, and I think that's why this works really well as an autumnal fragrance. It's good for lasting, it's good for projection. I have been impressed with this, and I will leave a link to my detailed review because I do think this is a lovely gift, and yeah, really good for autumn birthdays, or you know, for a gift to yourself in autumn. Next, I'm going to go to something a little bit more sweeter, which is Scandal by Night. This is my favourite from the Jean Paul Gaultier Scandal range. It's definitely the most intense and strongest. Now, it has the honey in from the original Scandal and the tonka bean as well, both really good autumnal cozy notes. But then mixed in with the patchouli and the vanilla is like a syrupy cherry, and I think cherries again are quite an autumnal fruit. They aren't as fresh as like a raspberry or a strawberry. They're more like a comforting, warm type vibe, and this one is definitely good for like going out in the evening in the autumn. You could totally wear this during the day. Probably that sweetness might not be quite so appropriate if you have quite a serious job where you don't want to smell, I don't know, a bit like sexy, but for most people I'm sure it'll be okay, and definitely evenings okay. And it's got real presence, this, like, it's a very Jean Paul Gaultier, it's very French, I guess. It's like, in my opinion, it's like a more interesting version of the Classique from Jean Paul Gaultier, and definitely the best in the Scandal range. So if you want warmth, honey, coziness, but with some fruity cherry in, this is perfect. Next, I'm recommending La Vie Belle Absolute. So this is your classic La Vie Belle from Lancome, but the Absolute means that it's a slightly different note, and in my opinion it's my favourite from the La Vie Belle range. It has a fragrance note in it called Cashmere Wood, and it's that cashmere like coziness that this really brings out. It also has that pear in, which I think is quite September-y or autumnal, and it also has like a blackcurrant as well, very autumnal fragrance note. It has a fair amount of iris, but it also has vanilla and praline and tonka bean, all of which make this relatively sweet, but again not sugary sweet. It's a praline nutty sweetness, which mixed with that blackcurrant and the pear and the floral notes, I think just makes this a really warm fragrance. It's good for lasting, it's strong, it's got good projection, and I think all the perfumes in the La Vie Belle range are super classy. So this is definitely like a nice perfume, nice bottle with the pink liquid. I really love this fragrance, and yeah, it's my favorite in the range. Next is an absolute classic from Chanel, and it is of course Chanel Coco Mademoiselle. If you've seen my detailed review, you'll know that this is the perfume that my mum wears. It really reminds me of like homely, comforting vibes, probably because it reminds me of Mum. It's predominantly patchouli and rose, but there's a really lovely sort of orange in the opening, orange blossom, jasmine, musk, a little bit of vanilla. It's a very classic and classy smell. It reminds me quite a lot of Elie Saab, but just more patchouli, I guess, and it's just very recognizable. You do smell this on a lot of people. Of course, it's an amazing gift. The only sad thing really is that the Chanel perfumes these days are so expensive, like you have to really want it to get it. I think this is going to be over £100, but in terms of what you get for your money, it is going to last okay. It is going to have okay projection, certainly in the first like 2 to 3 hours. It's definitely a good one for work. I smell quite a lot of people who's in office situations wearing this, but it's super safe. Everyone loves this smell, and I just think it's definitely a cozy smell, and that's why it's in my autumn list. I'm also going to recommend from Chanel the new Gabrielle Essence, which has just come out. This is a much improved version of the original Gabrielle, and it has some peach in, which is very comforting, and it has a vanilla coconut musk notes added, which really help make this last longer, have better projection, and that coconutty, musky and vanilliness mixed together to create what's quite a warm fragrance vibe. So this is definitely appropriate for September. Definitely pretty and floral fragrance, not amazing presence or projection, probably less so than Coco Mademoiselle, or maybe the same, but definitely very similar in the sense that it's classic smell, you can't really go wrong with it. The new face is Margot Robbie, who's very current right now, very cool, and you could definitely wear this to work, you could wear it in the evenings. And it's feminine without being too sweet if you don't want anything sweet. The main notes are tuberose, jasmine, and just kind of white floral notes. So it's very, very pretty and feminine and quite universal in terms of age, I'd say. Next, I'm recommending Miss Dior Eau de Parfum, or even the Pure Perfume. I have the old Miss Dior Cherie Eau de Toilette, which has some similarities, and I'm so sad they don't make this anymore, long story. Basically, this is also a patchouli and rose fragrance. You'll notice that as a common theme throughout these. The patchouli makes this super feminine, and it has orange in as well. So it's a bit of a competitor for Coco Mademoiselle, but I personally prefer it to Coco Mademoiselle. I think it's a little bit more pretty, potentially a bit younger, a bit more modern smell, and it's okay for lasting. Like if you really want it to last all day, you need to get the Pure Perfume, which is going to be quite expensive. But they do now do like rollable versions of this. They do hairsprays, so you can maybe just get all the body products and wear them rather than having to actually buy the perfume. And I love the bottle with the bow on it. I love all the branding. It's super, super cool. Dior is such a cool brand at the moment, and it's just pretty and feminine and comforting and exactly what you'd want, I guess, all year round, but definitely the Eau de Parfum in the autumn. And then finally, my last recommendation is the new Dior Joy Intense, which has just come out. This is a vanilla-y rose version of Original Joy. Original Joy was definitely spring summer, and this is definitely autumn winter. It's a musky rose, but after about an hour, for me, the vanilla really became the dominant note. And I absolutely think it's the vanilla in perfumes that makes them have that cuddly, warm feeling that you want in September. It also has tonka bean in again, which is a very warming and helps it last as well. And I think the packaging is quite cool, better than the original. And if you're thinking of like an autumn gift, then no one's going to complain about receiving a Dior perfume. So, and it's kind of pink, and maybe it's got more young vibes, but with that vanilla and the rose, I think that makes it more womanly than girly. And whereas I'd say Original Joy was quite young, quite girly. So definitely much better from Dior. I still much prefer Miss Dior to this one, but that's my personal preference. But I definitely, it's being released this September and definitely appropriate. It's a great autumn fragrance. So that's it, guys. I'm sure there are a million other fragrances that you could add to this list. Let me know in the comments if you like any of these for autumn and what else you'd add to the list for autumn. I will leave the links down below to where you can buy all these, as always, and to some of my more detailed reviews of some of these as well. If you found the video useful, helpful, interesting, whatever, then do give it a thumbs up and do subscribe if you're not already. I would love to have you here, and we are trying to hit that 10,000 subscriber milestone. But that's it, guys, so thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.